Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to NFR. It's Wednesday night. It's time for SAFRL Tier 2. Of course, we did this on Monday night with Tier 1 round Suzuka. We get to do it all over again with a different set of drivers. If you're watching last night, we had a field of 20 drivers around the Vegas circuit. It was a crazy race. Now, back to something a little bit more calm. Seems like we just have 10 drivers in the field, so obviously, as usual, just the short quali session, 18 minutes, will take a bit of pressure off the drivers in qualifying. Obviously, the less cars, the more space you're going to have in qualifying, less chance you have of being impeded. J-Boy. Really a lot of cars out on track, 5 of them, the other 5 remaining in the pits. Have the pair of Alpines, Panda and J-Boy, just trying to see who has their teammates here tonight. Spikes and Skull for Ferrari. Does anybody else have their teammate? I think it's just one Aston Martin, one McLaren. There's 2 Alpines, 2 Ferraris. There's 2 RBs. So I think that's 3 sets of teammates. Got 2 Alpines, 2 Ferraris, 2 RBs. Everybody else in the field missing a teammate. And as for Mercedes, I believe there is no Mercedes representation on circuit. Right on board now with the one and only Aston Martin here tonight. This is Moller. Just give you an idea of this Suzuka layout. Very easy circuit to go over those white lines. Of course, not a lot of tarmac runoff on this circuit. Lots of grass there on the outside. So not really going to get any sort of an advantage by leaving the circuit. You can see here Moller just trying to use all of the racetrack, just touching the grass there on the outside. Really doesn't help your tire temperature. Exit of spoons, so important. This is where you get all your top speed. Mess up that exit to compromise your straight all the way through. You used to lift in that corner, not anymore. Modern F1 cars simply stick to the ground and make what was once challenging corners look very easy. There was a time not so long ago, going up Eau Rouge at full throttle was actually a dare between the drivers. Now, even the slowest car on the grid has enough downforce to do that. Of course, downforce will be a big change come 2026. The entire concept of these cars changing. DRS will no longer be a thing. Pantry Star over the line, then Panda, then Boinkies. So we have a top 3. It's a 29.0 followed by a 29.5, then a 29.7, 29.8, so pretty close. Just Pantry Star at the moment holding a half-second advantage over the field. We still have another 5 cars to set lap times though. That's Moller, Maggot, Top Gun, Spikes and Gotzi. I have been told that that name is Gatozi, but I've been calling him Gotzi for so long. Unless he complains, he will remain Gotzi. Otherwise I'll end up calling him 2 things during the race, because I'll keep on forgetting and going back to the original. So let's just stick with the original. Moller into P5, spikes into provisional pole. I was going to say it is close, just 0.2 of a second. The numbers on my screen are appearing very small, so sometimes I just have a problem reading them, but I thought that gap was a little bit bigger, but in fact it's just 0.2. Remember, that was just Pantry Star's initial run. Drivers will have a little bit more in their following runs. It's very rare that you see the guys throw absolutely everything into their first fast lap. Usually see those lap times come down. Just 10 cars in the field really means you've got everyone in the field's got a good opportunity to pick up some points. All you need to do is finish the race. You're going to get yourself some points. It'll obviously be a good night for the pair of Ferraris, pair of Alpines and pair of RBs. If they're able to finish the race, they will all get double points for their constructor. Of course, whoever's in the Mercs this season, this isn't going to help their championship at all. No points for Mercedes. The rest of the teams can still be represented, but most of the guys not having a teammate. This is Maggot, currently in P3, and he's just lit up Sector 1 in purple. Fastest man in Sector 1 so far. Now goes through the hairpin. Red Bull on the outside, just giving him space. That's Top Gun staying well off the circuit. Hopefully he's on an in lap, otherwise he's probably compromised those tyres. This is Maggot now. This is Spoon. They call it Spoon because every time you think the corner's over, it keeps on going. Then you want to get the best exit possible. Go past the start finish straight there of the national circuit. That's the circuit they use during the year, and they don't use the full layout. Of course, many different racing series happen in Japan. Most of them you don't really hear about. Of course, there is Super Formula, which, if you're familiar with it, it's quicker than a Formula 2 car. It's more like a Formula 1.5. Very quick racing car, very quick series. I believe Liam Lawson spent a season there. And of course, everyone's favorite Yuki Tsunoda. Of course, another event that happens at this circuit is the Suzuka 8-hour motorcycle race. It's an endurance motorcycle race around this track for 8 hours. A lot of motor racing happens in Japan beyond F1. Of course, we did have 2 Japanese Grand Prix in the early 90s. We had the Japanese Grand Prix, which is this one right here in Suzuka. We also had the Pacific Grand Prix. The Pacific Grand Prix was ultimately cancelled because of low attendance. Even though Suzuka was getting sellout crowds, Pacific Grand Prix was battling to get crowds in. And that's because they decided to build a racetrack that you could only get to by a 3-hour train ride. There were no roads going into that city. It was a very remote little place, and as a tourist it would take quite a trip to get there. The track does still exist and is still used by Super Formula to this day. Also, rumors that we could see a return of the Fuji circuit in Japan. That would be with the reintroduction of Toyota to F1 as an engine supplier for Haas. Of course, Toyota wanted to get their track on the calendar. Toyota owned Fuji Speedway, and they almost got it right before they pulled out of F1. Now they're coming back into F1, and we could get a second Japanese Grand Prix. But can we make this calendar any longer? In qualifying, still got 7 minutes to go, so everyone in the pit still has more than enough time to get another run out. Maggot is the fastest man in the session so far. Spikes joins him on the front row. We've got Pantry Star and Panda, Moller and Skull, Boinkies and Gotsy, then Top Gun and J-Boy. Thing is really here, qualifying isn't as relevant as it is in a normal race when you've just got a field of 10. Really anyone in that 10 is a contender. It's all about what happens at the race start. You tend to worry a little bit more about the race starts when you get much bigger fields, but we have seen fields smaller than this on this channel and still managed to pick up a safety car. In fact, that was on Monday night. Spikes returns to the pits. Panda on a quick lap, coming to the end of a quick lap. His battery's discharged. Goes around, let's see, does he improve? Yes, he does. Goes into the 28s. It's a 28.9. So close. Look at the front row. 2/10. And then just 1/10 further back is Panda in P3. So very close at the front. Pantry Star also 29.0. Just half a tenth slower than Panda. It's not a lot of drivers, but the drivers that are here, very close. So I say anyone really here in the top 10 is a competitor, is a contender rather. Everyone's a competitor. Is a contender rather, even for a race win. Anything can happen. Just 10 cars out on track. This is Panda, currently P3 29.9. This is Pantry Star 29.0 on an outlap. These lap times are so close together that if you just find 2 or 3 tenths, you'll leapfrog the field. I promise you, each and every one of these drivers, they'll know just how much time they have left in that car. They'll know if they've got another 2, 3 tenths, half a second. They'll know everywhere where they made a mistake last time out, and they'll just be trying to perfect that section of the track while stitching the rest of the lap together. Good evening so far for RB, P4 and 5. It's important in a race like this with a small field when you have both teammates. Make a good night of it. So far RB doing a good job, P4 and 5. Nobody's been able to catch this man. 28.6. Spikes 28.8. Panda 28.9. Pantry Star 29.0. And Gotti 29.2. Half a second covers your top 5. Then everyone in the bottom 5 is sitting in the pits. Smaller Skull, Boinky, Top Gun, J-Boy, all sitting in the pits. 3.5 minutes remaining. Maggot's out on a quick lap, as is, I believe, the 2 RBs. This is Pantry Star. This is Gotti. See, he'll either dive into the pits. Yes, he does. He dives into the pits. Who else is out on track? I believe Maggot is the only one out on track. Pantry Star also out on track, but there we go. 28.8. Another 28.8. His times are ridiculously close at the front. I really hope that these times translate into race pace, because we're going to see DRS battles. 28.6, 28.8, 28.8, 28.9. Nothing in it there in the top 4. And still time to go out and make a difference if you're in the pits. 5 cars in the pits, 3 cars on outlaps. Pantry Star and Maggot on their way back to the pits. Well, just over 2 minutes remaining, so I think that will be the end of their session. As for everybody out on track, Moller, Skull, Boinkies, J-Boys just exited the pits. Spikes has just exited the pits. Guys leaving it late. There's still 2 minutes remaining, so you should be able to get around quite easily. Fastest man in the pits, man in P2 on an outlap. Pantry Star in P3 going slowly, but he's got a full battery, and this is him just winding up for one more go. Boinky's also on a quick lap, currently in P8, 29.8. This is Pantry Star, he's 1 second up the road from Boinky's, he's got the 28.8. So 1 second there between P3 and P8, but as for the top 5, very close together. This is Gotsy, he's at the bottom of that top 5. Also on 100%, just going around the track slowly. Guys preparing. I can tell you this will be the lightest fuel loads they'll be running all night. Just draining absolutely everything they can out of the car. Just enough to get around here. Moller on his final run. Ooh, and he's gone wide. He didn't enjoy my commentary. He's lost the wing in the process, so that'll be the end of his qualifying session. Moller will start no higher than P6. Still 4 drivers behind him. Make it 3 drivers behind him, looking to improve on their lap time, so that's not a secured P6. Maggot's on an outlap, but there's only a few seconds to go, and I don't think he's going to get around because he's only approaching the hairpin now. Checkered flag will fall in 5 seconds. If you're out there on a quick lap, you're going to be allowed to finish your lap. If you didn't make it to the checkered flag, your session is done. So Maggot just took a chance, but mistimed that, or didn't look at the timing screen before he left the pits. He wasn't able to get around. This is Spikes. He's looking for an improvement. He's currently P2, but he wants to be at the head of that front row. In order to do so, he needs to find himself 2.5 tenths. Let's watch his time here in Sector 2. Is he able to pick up any time? He is quicker, 1/10.5. He needs 2.5 tenths if he's going to go up into provisional pole. Let's watch him now through the final chicane. Don't want to take too much curb, can always get invalidated, but think he did that quite perfectly. Gets as close to the pit wall as he can. And a 28.3 in the closing stages. Goes into provisional pole. Still have to call it provisional because the session's not over. This is Panda also getting as close to the wall as he can. Does he find an improvement? He does. Goes up into P2. Guy's leaving it late. This is now Boinkies. Is he on a quick lap? No, he doesn't appear to be on a quick lap. That battery is full. The checkered flag has fallen. And Boinkies peels off into the pits. And even for the 10 drivers, that was a pretty exciting qualifying session towards the end. I don't believe Moller is listening to the stream, but if he's not, then that even makes it more random. As I went on board with him, that was the end of his quali session. It's qualifying, fun and games. It's all about the quickest lap time. It's all about setting the field. But lots of times, many times we've seen on the channel, qualifying does not reflect the end result. So there are your official qualifying standings for the Japanese round of SAFRL. Spikes, pole position for Ferrari. Then we've got Panda, Alpine P2. Then Maggot and Pantry Star P3 and 4. Skull and Gotzi, Boinkies and Molla. And then J-Boy and Top Gun. So just the 5 rows. Hopefully everyone behaves themselves into turn 1. Should be no excuses. You have a lot more space than usual. And then of course, as always, we don't get going immediately at first. We look down the vacant pit lane. Cars will be sitting to the right of us on the start-finish line. Drivers will be doing their final touch-ups. What tyre do they intend to start on? How deep into the race do they intend to go? Do they anticipate safety cars and underfuel? It's all things they will think about. Of course, not much you can do in the ways of setup. Cars are locked under park firm A, so when you leave the pits, that's pretty much your setup. There's a few small things you can change, but no major setup changes. So if you didn't like the feel of your car in qualifying, unfortunately, you're pretty much stuck with it. Of course, when we do finally get to the main straight, we're not going to get going immediately. There we go, main straight. We should get the dual green lights. Sometimes we don't, but should be dual green lights. That means formation lap is underway. Gives the guys one more opportunity to get around the circuit. Feel what these cars feel like with the full tank of fuel. Of course, it's going to feel very different from what they had in quali. In quali, the car is simply set up to go as fast as it can possibly go. You put on the soft tires, drain as much fuel as possible, and you give it everything. But you can't do that in the race. Obviously, you start with a full tank of fuel. Car is much heavier. Can't throw the car around as you do when it's light. Not going to have a good result. And obviously you don't have those soft tires. Of course, you can choose start on the soft tires, but nobody in the field has done so. Everyone in the field on the mediums, with the exception of one driver, that's Moller. He went with the hard compound. Saw some of the drivers on Monday night really stretching those hards. Of course, some of the drivers would have seen that stream from Monday night. It's gotten a few ideas for their strategy. If I remember correctly, Monday was pretty much the same as this, mostly medium runners. We now head to the start-finish line. Guys weave around, trying to get some last-minute tire temperature. Go to your grid box, try and get it in the purple. Of course, if you see any disqualifications, it means that driver didn't park correctly. Gets pushed back a little in his box. Hinders his start just a little. Now we wait for the 5 red lights. They will come on one by one. Then there will be a pause. They will go out, and we are underway. It's Ferrari versus Alpine into turn 1, or is it? There's a McLaren getting involved already. Maggot steals P2, but is he able to get it stopped? Yes, he is. Spikes leads the way from pole position. Maggot's made up an early position. Panda down to P3. Then we've got Pantry Star P4, Skull P5, Boinkies P6. Some of those cars already making up positions in the early stages. Gotti P7, J-Boy P8, Moller P9, and Top Gun making up the field. At the front, Spike's still out ahead, but not by far. Just a tenth up the road from Maggot. So these cars very close together. Of course, in 2024, DRS does become available a little earlier, but we don't have to worry about DRS right now. Virtual safety car. And we've lost the driver. We have lost Gotti. We are down to 9 runners. And what was already a sparse field is going to feel even a little bit more vacant. Disappointing there for the RBs. They had an opportunity to get both cars in the points tonight. Of course, just the 10 runners. Everybody who finished the race would go home with points. Big advantage to the teams that had 2 cars here tonight. But RB have lost one of those cars. As for the other one, flying the RB flag high. He's in P4, Pantry Star. Spikes leads the way. Maggot P2, Panda P3, then Pantry Star, Boinkies in P5. At a slightly safer following distance than the 3 ahead of him. Spike's leading the way for the time being, and it's a 1.2 second gap, so it's just outside of DRS. It's actually starting to fall. So Spikes is in the lead, but not comfortable by any means. Further back in the field, Skull in P6. He'll be able to see all that action ahead of him. Wants to get closer to it so he can be part of it. Lots of lockups. Very technical circuit this. Sector 1, Sector 2, Sector 3 all have different characteristics. You have to find a setup that sort of works in all 3 different variants. It can be challenging to find a setup that just works all around this circuit. You can't have a setup that just makes you quick in one particular part of the circuit, otherwise you'll be swallowed up in the rest of the circuit. Spike still leads the way from Maggot, the gap 1.1 seconds, so pretty stable, just outside of DRS. If Maggot can get within DRS, that may change very quickly. Panda still P3, then Pantry Star in the only remaining RB. His teammate has since retired. Boinkies P5. Still on the back of that train, just not close enough. He's actually outside DRS. Skull P6. J-Boy P7. Early stages of the race. Some of this field already starting to spread out. Already starting to break DRS just on lap 3. This is Moller. Say a lot of cars aren't in DRS. This is the one of the cars in DRS. He's fighting J-Boy for P7. Remember, good points on the table for tonight for every driver. Spike still out front. Gap actually starting to grow. It did hold stable for a while. Now going up to 1.4 seconds. So he finds another 3/10 on the cars behind him. That may be as a result of Maggot and Panda being pretty close together. Of course, as soon as 2 starts squabbling over position, just lets that leader get further and further ahead. Gap briefly came down to 1.2, now back up to 1.3, so it's just balancing just outside of DRS. And Spikes will want to keep it that way. The moment it falls within a second, it's going to be a lot more difficult to keep those cars behind. Boinky's in P5. Now he's closer to Pantry Star than he's been. Wonder if Pantry Star just made a bit of a mistake. Those two cars ahead of him. He was part of a three-way battle. He's now fallen back. And Boinky's was right on the back of him. So I think that must have been a mistake from the RB. Spike still controlling the race at the front. Not necessarily growing the gap. Just a stable gap. Then Panda in P2. Maggot in P3. Pantry Star P4. Not a lot of trading of positions for now. Just lap 4 of 27, a long way to go. Of course, we did have the one retirement. It did not trigger a safety car. It just triggered a virtual safety car, and we were underway relatively quickly. Some of the drivers that are falling back, they would remind a safety car to compress the field towards the end of the race. But the advantage of a field this small is everyone gets points. The disadvantage of a field this small is if you're hoping for safety cars, so you can be able to roll the dice once or twice. In a race like this, they are far less likely. Looking at the rear wing of the leader, you can just see Panda behind him, as close as he's been all race, 0.8 of a second. It's now going to be within DRS, and that's going to give him a very big boost. All the cars behind him. Maggot, Pantry Star and Boinky's. Not necessarily Boinky's, he's fallen away a bit. But Panda, Maggot, Pantry Star, they'll all have DRS. And Spike's at the lead of that field. It's going to be the only one without it. Now he was pulling away initially, but now that gap's starting to come down. We've got something flashing on our screens. It's just a yellow flag. Has gone away. Just a little PTSD there every time I see the yellow. Do not want to see 3 laps at slow speed around this circuit. At least not for now. Not on lap 5. Spike still leads the way. Gap just 9/10. Still big enough for now that Panda isn't able to make a move. Still a little too far behind. It's within DRS, but he wants to bring it even closer. 4 or 5 tenths. That's when you can start making the move. At the moment, just sitting at 8 or 9 tenths, just inside DRS, but it's not quite close enough, and we've seen a big mistake. A big mistake from the lead of the race. Maybe it was pressure. Maybe he didn't like me commentating on him. We'll probably never know. But Spike's big mistake. And I think the Ferraris have come together as well. Goodness me. It's going from a fantastic night to what was that? So Spikes was leading the race. Made a mistake. We saw him go sideways there. He lost the wing. And then unfortunately when he came back on circuit, side by side with his teammate. They had a nudge. Fortunately for his teammate, that is Skull. Is there damage on that car? We were looking at Spikes. Doesn't appear to be damage on the second Ferrari. So Skull should be able to go on through. But that is severe damage to the second Ferrari. I don't think he's going to want to do any more laps than he needs to. But this will obviously compromise his strategy. He's going to come in, get rid of those mediums a lot earlier than he would have wanted to. Would have probably only come in around lap 11 or lap 12. So he's only really getting half that tyre life out of the mediums. And a front wing to boot. It just makes your pit stop a little longer. Now Panda, the new leader of the race. Alpine. Would an Alpine love to be at the front of the field? Maggot is in P2. He's putting pressure on Panda as he has the entire race. Panda stole that position very early on. Remember, Maggot started P2, Panda started P3. Those positions swapped into turn 1. They've stayed in those positions since. Pantry Star in P3. Of course, those 3 cars have all been promoted by 1 spot. As a result of that mistake from the Ferrari, he's now going to be in a very different race to everybody else. 23 seconds adrift from the field on a new set of hards. And these 3 getting a little too close. Panda, Maggot, Pantry Star at the front. 7/10 of a second cover your top 3. Everybody else pretty spread out amongst the field, with the exception of, is that Top Gun? Yes, it is Top Gun chasing down Skull, fighting for P5. Every single position worth more points. All you need to do is get to the checkered flag for guaranteed points this evening. The Red Bull does get by the Ferrari, but just a little mistake there from Top Gun. It's going to allow Skull to come right back at him. Gonna get as close as he can. This just isn't really the right part of the racetrack for an overtake. There's nowhere to go. Everything's pretty much top speed, full throttle. Maybe into the hairpin, but that's really only when your opponent makes an error. Maybe runs wide. Or you just try and get the better line. Make sure you get the superior traction on the exit of the corner. Turn it into a traction race. But so far, Top Gun doing everything he needs to do to stay in front of the Ferrari. 4/10 of a second, cover the 2. Of course, now Skull gets the slight advantage of being towed around by Top Gun. So Top Gun makes the overtake, but it's not that easy to get away. This is Skull in the Ferrari. One of the only drivers that's in a DRS battle, with the exception of those leaders. Let's go back to the leaders. This is Panda. And that is Pantry Star in the RB. Trading places. Maggot, Pantry Star and Panda. Panda goes all the way from P1 down into P3. It's terrible to lose a position, but when you lose 2, Maggot out front now, Pantry Star P2, Panda P3. Those 3 have swapped in order. But now Panda is going to get some DRS. He's going to come back at that RB. It's not going to stay like this. Remember, still early stages. We haven't reached that first pit window. Things could be crucial, especially for these top 3. Somebody's going to pull an undercut. Somebody's going to try and come out ahead of this battle. Some of these drivers, P2, P3, they may be quicker than this, but you just sort of get stuck in this DRS train, especially if you're there in P3. You get DRS, it's supposed to be an advantage. It's supposed to give you a boost up the road. But if the car ahead of you has that same advantage, you just get stuck. So it's usually the car at the rear of the DRS field that tries to pull off the undercut. And that is the Ferrari. Is it Spikes? It must be Spikes. He's made another pit stop. And I think Spikes has officially been lapped. Is he still in that car, or is that car ghosting? It appears to be ghosting. So that will explain the pace. Still ghosting. So Maggot leads from Pantry Star, Panda P3. Thoughts in the comments for Skull. Let's go Skull. This is Skull. We're right on board with him. He's just behind Top Gun. 4/10 of a second is the gap. It's So he's been able to stay close to that Red Bull. After the Red Bull overtook him, he hasn't been able to shake off the Ferrari. Skull just staying there, 0.4 of a second, 0.5 of a second, just keeping the pressure on. Every time you get to a straight, if you don't have DRS, you've still got the use of your battery, and you've still got the classic old slipstream. Of course, you see the slipstream effect a lot more in IndyCar and MotoGP. No DRS, no ERS in those sports. That's what they rely on. You can definitely pick up time on slipstream alone. That's the advantage for the car at the back. Instead of the car defending at the front, the guy behind you is going to have slipstream, DRS, and if he's managed his battery correctly, he's going to have ERS too. You're only going to have one of those steps, and if you discharge the battery completely, you're not going to be able to defend for another half a lap. All of the DRS stuff I'm talking about is irrelevant at Monaco. Just the one zone, and it's pretty useless. It's probably the one track you can still defend with zero battery and zero DRS. Maggot leads from Pantry Star, then Panda. Just getting a little confused there with the Ferrari coming through. I think what's happening there is that that car is not, it appears to be ghosting, but I think Spikes is in control of that car. He's just ghosting currently because he's being lapped. But now he's actually unlapping himself, it seems. Let's have a look. Where is Spikes? This is Spikes. Just keep our eyes on that car. If it stops ghosting, then we'll know he's back in control, but he's going really quick. That doesn't suggest to me that's an AI controlled car. Maggot from Pantry Star, Boinky's P3. If Spikes is in control of that car, you'll be thinking I was driving with these guys a few laps ago, battling for position, defending my P1. Now here they are again, but they're a lap ahead of me. In fact, he's just over a minute behind P8. Wouldn't he love a safety car? Of course, having said that, if you are a lap behind, it's very crucial to unlap yourself before that safety car comes out. While the whole field can compress behind a safety car, unfortunately on the game, unlike in real life, the safety car will not let the lapped cars go. So if you're a lap behind and you get a safety car, you're not going to get the advantage everyone else gets, and you're pretty much going to get locked into that lap behind. So make sure to unlap yourself. And that car is no longer ghosting, so I think it was just ghosting because he was getting blue flags. But now he's back underway and he's the fastest man on the race circuit. Fastest lap of the race goes to Spikes. First rounds of pit stops starting to happen. Pantry Star, Boinkies, Maggot, Skull, all into the pits, busy pit lane. Not a lot of teammates, so people don't really have to worry about double stacks. Top Gun, the leader of the race. Once upon a time, he was at the rear of the field. That's what happens in a small field. Someone who was leading can now find themselves a lap behind, and someone who was at the rear can now be leading. Said everyone was a contender. Sometimes all it takes is a safety car and being on the right part of the race circuit when that safety car is called. You can get an advantage, everyone else can get a disadvantage. appears my game is freezing for a moment when I switch between drivers every now and then. I'm not sure why it's doing that. But if you're seeing it on your screens, I apologize. Hopefully it goes away. Top Gun leads the way from Moller, then Panda in P3, and I think, yeah, I'm right, Panda is the provisional leader of the race. Those two cars ahead of him have not pit. One of them has now pit. That was Top Gun. And Panda is not going to wait any longer. He's not going to wait for Moller to make his pit stop. Gets past Moller on the race circuit. New hards versus old hards. That's the difference. Look how he pulls away here. Look at the traction he gets on the exit of the corners. That's the difference of 11 laps on a set of hards. Now Maggot. He's getting pretty close to Moller. He'll know Moller's on a different strategy altogether, and he wants to get past this Aston Martin because all the while the Alpine's getting up the road while Maggot is trapped behind the green Aston Martin. Just can't do anything about him right here, but he gets him into the hairpin. Pretty crazy move, wasn't able to get it stopped. Now the Alpine comes back at him. He's got the inside line, but he doesn't have the tarmac. Gets it on the grass. Maggot. Well, questions will be asked, but he just tried to take the position, ran out of tarmac. Not sure if the driver gave him enough space. I think he did. But just got the wheels on the grass, and things only get worse from there. Maggot will be disappointed with that. He's just made his pit stop. This is the time to be using those fresh tires to make up seconds on your lap times. He's gone and lost a couple of positions and got a whole bunch of grass on his tires when they're supposed to be at their peak. But Panda, a little bit of pressure will be off his shoulders now as he sees his opponent fall back. Maggot now in P4. Let's go have a look at the McLaren. He's going to have to do a bit of a recovery drive if he's going to get back up there. Not sure how he's going to feel when he gets wheel to wheel with that driver again. Of course, that was Moller. Moller on the much older tyre on a different strategy, but he wasn't giving up the position. And nowhere in the rules is it written that he needs to give up the position, whether you have pit, whether you haven't pit, whatever the scenario may be. If you are fighting for position, there is absolutely no reason why you should let anyone go. So Moller held his position, defended his line. Fortunately for Maggot, didn't end out the way he would have wanted. He did a big lunge into the hairpin, just wasn't able to get it stopped. And this will be frustrating because Moller's staying out for another lap, is he? Or is he going to peel off into the pits? He's staying out for another lap, but surely this time McLaren's not going to have any issues. Opens up the DRS, he'll be in front before turn one. I'm not quite sure what that was, but you saw it on the stream, so you can tell me what that was. He got past and just did a bit of a zigzag. I think that was just to show his displeasure towards the Aston Martin team. Maybe he was telling him, don't move under braking. Or maybe he was saying something a little bit more violent. I was going to say under the crash helmet, but I do hope none of these drivers are wearing helmets. I think that'll take Simulation 2 just a level too far. In fact, I do know one driver who uses a helmet in his simulator, but I'm not going to bring up his name here. I shall not speak that name, because that name may appear at one of the leagues I broadcast, and that is not something I want. Because I assure you, the man that uses a helmet in his rig also takes out half the field on many occasions. I'll let you guess who it is. If anyone thinks they know who it is, let me know. Some of the drivers might know who it is. They don't drive in SAFRL, they don't drive in SKR, they don't drive in DRS, but I'd say it's a pretty well known name in South African leagues. He usually just doesn't last very long in a particular league before he moves on. In fact, he's worse than me. I've never had to change my name. This driver also changed their name because, well, no one else would take him. Pantry Star out front, 0.8 of a second, followed by Pantry Star. Last thing I'll say about that driver is I once commentated on a race of his. It wasn't a Formula 1 race, it was an endurance race around the Kyalami circuit. He did I think it was a Kyalami 5-hour, and 20 qualifiers, so 20 cars at the start of the race. The driver I'm speaking of, he started in P20, and coming out of turn 1, he was in P6, but that's because half the field was pretty much in the gravel as a result of him. A few laps later, he crashed and retired, and we had awfully long gaps in a 5-hour race on just the 8th or 9th lap. So if you think I'm rambling now, imagine me over a 5-hour period when nothing much is happening on circuit. No real DRS battles. We've got this DRS battle. They're in the middle of the field. It's Boinkies versus Top Gun and Skull. They're all fighting it out for P4. Top 3 positions pretty settled for now. Gap 1.1 seconds between the leaders, so no DRS there. Then Maggot a further 5 seconds back. He has been able to reclaim P3, but as a result of that little incident, he's 5.6 seconds adrift from the 2 ahead of him. We're watching these 3, Boinkies versus Top Gun versus Skull, because it's the most exciting battle on the circuit. This is the car in the middle. This is the Red Bull of Top Gun. He's chasing down Boinkies and defending from Skull behind him. Skull going for the outside line, thinking about it, into the chicane. You really just want to get as close as you possibly can, open up DRS, but unfortunately for him, the Red Bull ahead of him, he too has DRS. You can see the slit there in the rear wing, just reducing the drag of the cars down the straight. Boinkies won't have that advantage. What he needs to do is battery management. Charge that battery up where he doesn't necessarily need it. And then on the straights with DRS, he needs to be able to apply that battery. That's his only defense. So Panda out front. Not comfortable from Pantry Star. Said that gap was up to 1.1 seconds and outside of DRS, but now that has changed. Just 0.3 of a second between the two. Panda versus Pantry Star at the top. Alpine versus RB. Nothing much the McLaren in P3 can do about it now. He's starting to drop back even further. 5.8 seconds now. Maggot is adrift of these two, fighting for the lead of the race as we approach lap 20 of 27. So we have a crazy DRS battle for the lead of the race. And we have an even crazier battle for P4. Boinkies leads that battle. Top Gun P5, Skull P6. No penalties for anyone in the field so far. Of course, if you're in one of those DRS battles and you've got a penalty, well, you're only really there. As I say that, the commentator's curse strikes again. If I'm not bringing out if I'm not bringing out safety cars, if I'm not causing crashes, now I'm even causing penalties. I said there were no penalties, and then Moller was like, "Oh, I'll give you one." Just to confirm it's a track infringement. Yes, it is. So it's just the 3 seconds for Moller. Of course, pit infringements, a lot more harsh than that. 10 seconds at a go. Of course, Pastor Maldonado, driver from the early 2000s, rather the early 2010s. He was famous for getting a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which then he got a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. He then came in to serve his drive-through. You won't believe it. He got a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane on his penalty. Double drive-through penalty for Pastor Maldonado. Of course, one-time race winner, and I'm still not quite sure how he pulled that off. Skull up into P4. He's got past the Red Bull of Top Gun, drove behind him quite a while. But now he's taken the lead of that DRS group, and he's done it at the right time. 21 of 27. Is he going to be able to shake off the likes of Top Gun, or is Top Gun simply going to be able to come back at him? Top Gun looks towards the inside, but that's not the right part of the racetrack to do it. There might be a lunge into the hairpin, but surely Skull will defend that line. Remember, sometimes it's not about the speed into this corner, it's all about the traction out of this corner. So you want to get as close as you can and then maximize your traction on the exit. Don't want to get too happy on the throttle, don't want to hit it too hard. That's going to make the rear go out. If you don't catch it in time, you'll get a full 360. Pantry Star out front, Panda P2. These two going side by side, swapping positions, using DRS. This time Panda will have the DRS. Getting awfully close, pulled side by side. Thought he was going to go around the outside, but luckily he gets ahead before the corner. Otherwise he was going to have to pull off something spectacular. So now those two have swapped around again. This could come down to who has DRS last. These two matching each other lap after lap, just 0.3 of a second between the two. Maggot P3. Top Gun in P4. He's reclaimed that position from Skull, so Skull took the position but wasn't able to get rid of the Red Bull, so the Red Bull came back at him under DRS. Skull's still got more time, 5 laps to go. Top Gun can't get too comfortable with that P4 just yet. Maggot seems to have a comfortable P3, just needs to bring the car home. 7 seconds to the car behind, 6 seconds to the car ahead, so he's in a race of his own. No opponents to speak of, at least in sight. Panda and Pantry Star still matching each other. Lap after lap, I look at the gap. It's 0.3, it's 0.4, it's 0.3 again. These two inseparable, magnetized to each other, setting very similar lap times. Maggot just falling back. He made up some positions from that mistake, but then he just hasn't had the tires to come back at them. But he is in a comfortable P3. Top Gun still in P4, covering the Ferrari, covering the Sauber behind him. He's not going to be able to finish in P4 without a fight. Now Panda out front, Pantry Star P3, the gap 7/10. It's the biggest gap we've seen in a while. But all you need is one DRS zone and that gap will close. Just a mention of Spikes. I don't think he's got a good mention for what he's doing out here. He's in P9. Remember, there was a time he was 1 minute and 10 seconds behind the next car. Somehow he's closed that into the 30 seconds on that one set of mediums. So fantastic drive so far. Just made that error, very unlucky. Then when he came back onto the track, he had a little bit of an issue with his teammate that would have slowed him down even more. Very broken wing. Compromised his in-lap very badly. And then a pretty lengthy pit stop. I think after that he may have made another pit stop. That's why he was a minute behind. Has closed that gap up. We've got a caution in Sector 1, we've got a caution in Sector 3, and they've both disappeared. So we're back underway. Lap 24 of 27. Of course, if we were to get a safety car now, we'd have a one-lap sprint. Guys at the back would love that. Especially Spikes, he's on the soft tyre. Of course, if you're in the top 10, you get points. That means everybody in this field will get points. Just 9 drivers left in the field as Gartzi retired early on. Of course, if you do get fastest lap, regardless of where you finish in this race, you're going to get that one bonus point. Bonus point only goes to fastest lap if you're in a points paying position. Everyone's going to be in a points paying position. So you could throw on a set of softs and go after the extra point. I think that's what Spikes has done. Knew he was at the rear anyway. He could have probably extended the mediums to the end of the race, but decided I'll come in, get a set of softs, and instead of picking up 2 points for the race, I'll pick up 3. Remember, every time you do that, not only do you gain a point, you take a point away from one of your competitors. I've even seen drivers do it from outside the top 10. Drivers that don't have a hope in scoring a point towards the end of the race, then they'll just come in 2 or 3 laps to go, put on a set of softs, steal the fastest lap, even though they're not going to get a point because they're outside the top 10. But you've stolen that 1 point from one of your competitors. And in F1, championships have been won by 1 point. It has happened. And if you know later on in the season that you've lost the championship by a point, and you can go back to a period in a race where you know you could have got that 1 extra point, the championship's just going to bite at you. So every time a point is on the table, go and get it. You're going to regret it later. Of course, going into the 89 finale, into the 1990 finale, into the 97 finale. In fact, 89, 90, 94, 97, all of those championships, we went into the final round that was separated by 1 point. Of course, that was under the old scoring system in F1. Very different scoring system to what we have today. Back then, only the top 6 cars scored a point. 10 for the winner, 6 for P2, 4 for P3, and then obviously 3, 2, 1 for 4, 5 and 6. Today, finishing in P7 is considered a good result. 20 years ago, finishing in P7 was no points for you. And that was usually in a field of 24. I think the most cars F1 ever had on track was 28. But that was F1 in a very different time. No such thing as super licenses, and lots of people could get into F1, so we had all of those teams, but a lot of those teams didn't belong in F1. So even though we had the 28 cars, many times we didn't have 28 cars on the racetrack because they didn't all qualify. They'd be 5 or 6 seconds behind in qualifying, and they'd be told they can't race for safety reasons. They're simply too slow. So if you think the gaps between the top teams and the bottom teams are crazy today, they once were a lot worse. Spikes, new fastest lap of the race. Now J-Boy's done the same thing. He's also come in for a brand new set of softs. So he's going to also have an opportunity at that one bonus point. Everybody else on the mediums are hard, so don't expect fastest laps from anyone in the front. Panda defending from Pantry Star, 3/10 of a second. Then Maggot right behind them. Actually, that's not Maggot. Maggot's in P3. That's a Ferrari just behind them. That's probably, is that Spikes? I think, yes, it is Spikes. That'll be so frustrating. Those were the cars he was racing at the start of the race. Now he's being forced to give up positions. He's getting blue flags. It's being incredibly annoying. And if you can see, that ghost car is actually matching the leader's pace. So that is where Spikes should be on pace. He should be with those top two. Just that one crucial mistake. Suzuka, one of those circuits that if you make a mistake at the wrong part of the circuit, you're done for. Few places on circuit can still be forgiving. You can still get on with it. But the way he went off, the damage he picked up, and then the little excursion he had with his teammate as well, just wasn't able to come back. Panda over the line, takes a checkered flag. Then Pantry Star in P2. Just now wait for Maggot to show up. He was 8 seconds adrift. There he is, comes around the final corner, takes the checkered flag. So those are your podium sitters confirmed. And we've got a few penalties. So we're just going to wait for the game to work all of that out. And we'll read the official results when they become available. Skull picks up a 10-second penalty at the end of the race. Is that correct? It's falling down the order. Luckily, these gaps are very big. So he's not going to lose too many positions as a result. Everybody has crossed the check flag, but now we're just going to wait for this timer to tick down. Or is it J-Boy? Yes, I'll be waiting for J-Boy. He's approaching the final part of the circuit. He'll go over the checkered flag, and that is tier 2. Top Gun gets the driver of the day. I keep on forgetting to mute this game and they keep on copyrighting me, and it's quite a mission to mute the song out. But there are your official results. Bandit takes the victory from Pantry Star. Those two neck and neck the entire race. Then Maggot P3. He was quick too, just fell off towards the end. Top Gun P4. That's your driver of the day. Then Boinky's P5. Moller P6. Skull P7 after that penalty. Then J-Boy P8. Spikes P9 after his misfortunes. And the one DNF, Gotsy. Of course, now Panda, Pantry Star, Maggot, Top Gun. That's the top 3 and the driver of the day. You are invited to the cool down room. And we're just going to give the drivers a minute or two to see if they want to join the cool down room, have a chat after the race. If you're watching, thanks for joining us. We will be back in a minute or two. Just want to see who's going to join. Stay with us. So we are back. Thanks for waiting if you did. Don't see anyone in the cool down room yet. If anyone does show up, we'll bring them in. But it was a fantastic race. Didn't have the best turnout on Monday night. Didn't have the best turnout tonight. Hopefully, with F1 going on a bit of a break, that's going to build up everybody's anticipation yet again. As you start to miss F1, you'll want to get back in your rig. And of course, last night, what a race we had. 20 drivers in the field. It was a crazy one. Well, we've waited a little longer and it was worth it. We've got Maggot. He is in the cool down room. We'll just give it another few seconds, see if anybody else does decide to join. Minute or two. Want to see who's going to join. There we go. We're with Maggot.
How's it?
Good on you. It looks like you're the only one here. But tell me a little bit about your race. I don't know if you were listening to the commentary in the background. All I said was questions will be asked. That's I was riding on board with you, but that's all I said was questions will be asked. I don't know. Was there enough space? Did you just run out of tarmac? Were you? I don't know.
It's questionable. I'll have a look now when I do the review. But it's just frustrating when someone, it's not in the leading battle that gets involved, and yeah, it's cost me a lot of seconds. So,
of course, I
but
think
it is what it is.
I think he had 13 laps on his tires, and
Yeah.
of course that was the time you wanted to make the most of your tires because
Exactly.
they were brand new.
And he pitted the lap afterwards. So yeah,
these things happen. Just the 10 drivers. We still managed to get the one retirement, so we just finished with the 9. Luckily, no safety cars. That would have probably brought you back into the race if we had late safety.
Maybe. But yeah, Panda and who's the other guy? Pantry Star. They were quite quick. Yeah.
They were
on it.
They were absolutely matching each other lap after lap. And then another driver that was up there and also had some misfortune, a lot more than you did actually,
Spikes.
was Spikes. Spikes very quick at the start of the race, and then he made that mistake, went off circuit, broke his wing, and then I don't know if you would have seen it, but obviously he was in the gravel trying to get back on circuit, and when he did get back on circuit, I don't think he saw his teammate.
Sure.
So, so they actually did nudge. They did hit tires. There was no damage to Skull's car, but yeah, when he came back on track, he didn't know there was a car there, and he definitely didn't know it was his teammate. So
I drove straight through his ghosted car, so luckily, he was ghosted for me. So
even right at the end, he was sort of matching your guys' pace, even though he was ghosting and a lap behind. So if he had stayed there, I think he would have been a contender throughout. But
no, he was good.
I'm just going to check the comment section one more time. Thanks, Fernando. I think people are starting to get off. So I'm just going to end the stream real quick. Thank you very much if you've joined. Of course, if it's your first visit, subscribe. Leave a like on the video. And I'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30 for DRS. We'll see you then. Cheers. Okay, now you can say shit.